Human trafficking is everywhere and can happen at any time. For instance, it's happened here at our Target and local Walmart in Mount Pleasant in broad daylight. At what point do we keep continuing to brush it off and thinking it wouldn't happen to us? Human trafficking is happening globally as well as making our way into our neighborhoods. The illegal trade of individuals for forced labor, sexual favors, and/or prostitution is known as human trafficking. I attended a seminar in Grand Rapids for my friend who almost fell victim at GVSU during the day to being trafficked. And also I've done a lot of research on this topic for this paper. First, I'm going to go over who it affects and what human trafficking is. Second, I'm going to go over the signs of human trafficking. And finally, I'm going to go over the economics of human trafficking. The legal trade of individuals for forced labor, sexual favors, and prostitution is labeled human trafficking. So what is human trafficking and who does it affect? The article Global Human Trafficking and Child Victimization, created in December of 2017 by Jordan Greenbaum, a medical director of Child Protection Services as well as a medical doctor, and Nia Bodrick, who is a board-certified pediatric, states, according to the U.S. federal law, sex trafficking involves exchanging a person younger than 18 years old in a commercial sex act. This might include exploitation of a child for prostitution, sexual exploitation in the context of travel and/or tourism, the mail-order bride, and early forced marriages, production of pornography, and live sex abuse. As you can see, sex trafficking is not just sexual favors, it also comes in many different forms, such as the mail-order bride or an early arranged marriage. The stats that are involved with human trafficking, as stated by Polaris of 2016, there was a record of 20.9 million people that fell victim to human trafficking. 68% were forced into labor, 26% are children, and 55% are women or girls. Just because boys are not involved in statistics does not mean they're not susceptible for it happening to them. Now that we have the knowledge of what it is and who it affects, I'm going to now talk about the signs that are important to pair with human trafficking. The signs that are involve the specific language between the traffickers and/or victims. According to Tammy Tony Butler, a sex assault nurse examiner and anti-trafficking consultant, created a book called Human Trafficking, created in May of 2019, said, languages are essential to the understanding of different countries, environments, enterprises, and socioeconomic status. Human trafficking smugglers have dialect unique to traffickers and their victims. And as a practitioner involved with human trafficking victims, it's important to know the language that was used in the certain situations. Another sign is forced to being put in another country, which is really typical for human trafficking, and having no ID or passport when they get there. In the article, Economics of Human Trafficking, published in April of 2017 by Bailey Ebby, who is a co-founder of Dreamer & Co., as well as the operations manager at the Institute of Faith, Work, and Economics, says, women were taken advantage of when migrating to new countries to find jobs. The employer stated that they would cover their visa and travel expenses, but once they got to the new country, their passport and ID were stripped for them, and they didn't speak the language, being forced into bonded labor. Also, another sign is being someone that seems to be in debt to somebody else, as well as signs of physical and psychological abuse. Sexual exploitation is also another sign, and some things that show this are substance misuse, clothing that are mainly provocative or sexual, and receiving money for their services. A last one that a lot of people don't tie with human trafficking is forced labor, and that can involve holding their wages, making underage people work for longer than 40 hours, and also not paying them. Now that we talked about the signs, I'm going to talk about the economics behind human trafficking. The economics behind human trafficking are interesting because it's a low-risk market and a high-profit market at the same time. They target low-income communities that are susceptible to oppression and wars, and the employers make a huge profit off of it. But the workers exploiting their employees is costly for the employers up front, but once they put out their individuals for services and/or the girls that they put out for services, make their money back tenfold. And it's also low profile, which means it's paired up with low risk. So to review, I first went over human trafficking and the people it affects. Second, I went over the signs involved with trafficking. And lastly, I went over the economics of trafficking. The illegal trade of individuals for forced labor, sexual favors, and/or prostitution is labeled as human trafficking. Human trafficking is the trading business of human lives. The education on this topic is slim to none, and people feel invincible as if it would never happen to them. This is integrated in other cities, countries, worldwide, as well as states. which makes it a huge threat in our community that should be emphasized sooner than later. Thank you.